Lanfranco. So welcome to everybody. I'm so happy to see you. I hope the audio is okay and the video. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Can you see me? And my lips are
Sure.
moving? Good. Well, I'm going to have you, let's start out. I know that in the classroom you have a microphone, so if you want to share, of course, I ask you to do that. I'm going to just have you think for a moment when we talk about the Western United States, what states do you think of?
California, Washington, Alaska,
Okay, you think of California, Washington,
and
and
Alaska.
Alaska. Thank you. Who else wants to share? Lanfranco, what states come to your mind?
If you think about the Old West, I think about Arizona, Nevada,
Okay.
so no.
Arizona, Nevada.
Texas, a little
Utah.
bit.
Which one, Bruna?
Utah.
Utah. Good. What about someone in Trevi, Centro Trevi?
Wyoming.
Oh, Wyoming. Oh, you're looking at the map on your wall, I bet you are. Bruna has a giant map on her wall with all of the United States,
Oregon.
so she knows it. Oregon, well done. Is
Oregon.
there
Yeah.
anybody in Centro Trevi who has another state you want to add?
Montana.
They're all coming from the people online. Montana, good. Okay, those are some of the states. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I hope you can see it. I will also send you first I'm going to give you a link, I believe, to this. You know I like to have a visual, so I created a lesson for you. Let me just make sure that I can share it with you. Let's see. I'm going to make it so that anyone with a link can see it. Let's see. So I'm going to copy the link and then I'm going to share it with you so you can also see it, even if you don't have the link on you right now. So I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm putting the link in the chat. So if anyone who's actually online wants to click on this, you have the lesson in front of you. For the people who are in the classroom, I'm going to share my screen with you so you will see what I see. So just a moment here. Okay, you should see a very long lesson. Okay, you should see my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Sure.
Yes, great. So I'm going to make this smaller. I hope you can see it. So if this is your first time with us, I'm from, I live in Trieste. So this is the Associazione Italo-Americana. We do these lessons together with CHEDOCS. Today's lesson is called Out West. You notice I didn't say just the Western states, because out west is also a concept, isn't it? Lanfranco knows this because he said, when I think of the Old West, right? So sometimes we say out west to go out west. Sometimes we say the Old West. Sometimes, we have different words for this. Today we're calling it out west, okay? And my question for you is, what do you think about when you think about the term out west, okay? And maybe some of these things came to you. I found this marvelous image here. Maybe you think of dynamite of people breaking into banks in the Western films. Maybe you think of some kind of ale or beer. You think of those old saloons.
Yeah.
Maybe you think of gold. Maybe you think of barrels of, I don't know, could be gunpowder, could be moonshine, bonnets from the women's heads in the 1800s. Or maybe you think of a cactus, okay? Because the Western United States are, deserts. There's a lot of cacti there. Maybe you think about gold. Maybe you think about cowboy boots or tents and camping, or you think about a bank vault. Perhaps you think about cards and gambling, or maybe a teepee. Maybe you think about the Native Americans and teepee, or the sheriff in these old Western films, or maybe you think about a horse and carriage, people going westward, the new frontier, or maybe you just think of, like one of these. I don't know, what would that be? What animal is that? Some kind of
Longhorn.
skeleton, isn't it?
Longhorn.
What is
A
it?
skull.
a
Yeah,
school, but
A
skull.
ball.
Yeah, but
Ball.
what's the animal?
this
Buffalo.
is the school of a cow, no?
Cow or a
Buffalo.
buffalo,
Cow,
you're
of a
saying? Maybe
cow,
a
no?
buffalo.
A buffalo,
Uh,
buffalo, not with the horns, with the horns, maybe the long horns.
Maybe a longhorn. Could be.
Mhm.
Could be. Maybe you think of a lantern or a ribeye steak or something, the cowboy stuff. Or I don't know why we would have a Bible. Maybe people, missionaries or something. I don't know.
yeah,
Or
the
hot sauce.
Mormons. There are in Utah the Mormons.
The Mormons. Yeah, it could
Yeah,
be the Church of Latter-day Saints. It's true. And then
exactly.
of course you've got the griddle, we would say, or you could call it you call it Giza. What do we call it? I'm just trying to remember it.
Frying
I can see it in
pan
my
or
head. It's
skillet.
frying pan, but I'm trying to think we wouldn't call it God, the word's not coming to me. Maybe it's coming
Skillet.
to someone there. Huh?
Skillet. Skillet.
It's a skillet, but what's the material? I can't remember.
Metal.
Yeah, it's definitely metal. It's Giza in Italian. I just can't remember the word in English. It'll come to me.
Oh,
Anyway, we've got the revolver. We've got bags of cash. Again, we've got, if we're thinking about the Mormons, we've got the church again, or, could be any Christian church going out west, right? The horseshoe, maybe we think about farmers or anything else. Okay. So I
oui.
sometimes think about train robberies when I think
Great
about the
train
West.
robbery.
People going on the trains and people shooting up and the good guys wearing the white hats, the bad guys wearing black hats, things like that. So
The great
or the
train,
woman tied on the train tracks waiting for the person to come save her.
the
So
great train robbery was the
yeah.
first Western, the first Western movie.
Oh yeah, was that right?
Yes, the Great Train Robbery was the first Western movie in the history of the
Oh, well, there
movie.
you go. See, so the things that come to our minds, sometimes there's a reason for them, right? So sometimes we think about ghost towns. I don't know if ghost towns. You have these, and these still exist, right? In the West, there are these towns that popped up during the gold rush, and were
Pop
lived
up.
in for a while. And then as people moved westward, they kind of abandoned these towns. So some of them became historical sites later, but I sort of think of these kind of old time places, because the West has this feeling, this kind of mythical feeling, doesn't it? Just like this historic thing happening, right? Maybe you think about the California gold rush, right? People going out. But not necessarily just California. It was also in Colorado. People were finding gold. Gold was everywhere, and people were rushing to go get it. And that pushed people towards just opening up the West. So when we talk about the Old West, as Lanfranco said, right? You could hear the American frontier, people might have called it, or the Old West, or the Wild West, right? Sometimes we still talk about the Wild West, and it's full of course, the history, but there's folklore, and it's part of the American identity. Even if you don't live in the West, it does become part of who you feel like you are. So if I read this last sentence here, it says the legends, historical events, and folklore of the American frontier, known as the frontier myth, have embedded themselves into United States culture, so much so that the Old West and the Western genre of media specifically has become one of the defining features of American national identity. So when we think about the West, when we think about train robberies and we think about going, for the looking for gold and all those things, it's kind of the cowboys, it's kind of the sexy part of the creation of the American myth, American identity. Of course, we forget all the other bad stuff um that's related to all this kind of expansion, but it is part of the American identity. And even now, when we talk about people from out west, we talk about them as being rugged. We talk about them as being individualists. People are out there and surviving on their own. And there's this whole myth about that, the Western person, right? So, um, the other words we use to describe the Western United States could be the American West, we said, the Western states, the far West, the Western territories, and just the West. Okay, but it is one of the four regions defined by the United States Census Bureau. Okay, but it's kind of a wide it's a wide definition, as you'll see. But when we talk about the West, you have to understand that the idea of the West kept going westward. There was a point in time when the Midwest, what we call the Midwest now, was actually the West. But of course, as people started to expand westward, the idea of what was actually West kept going, kept moving, right? So I've got some stuff about this with you that you can see, but I want to show you some images. Okay, so these are small images here, but you can actually put a link on the lesson so that you can actually click on here and you can go and see how our idea of the West changed. You can see when America was a new nation, like around 1789, you can see that the country basically stopped in the area that we now call the Midwest. You had the East that was the first to be colonized, right? Then you have the Midwest, now what we call the Midwest, and then the rest was the West. Then it kind of moved over, didn't it? People started moving over. That pink bit started getting wider and wider, right? 1845 to 1846, before the Mexican-American War. Okay, we're down in Texas at this point. Okay, and then you can hear the pre-Civil War expansion. You can see that California is pink at this point. And then you can just see that that pink area is growing and growing, right? 1884 to 1889. And then in 1912, all the US states. Okay, so you can kind of see how the idea of the West kept changing depending on what was happening historically. Now, if you look at this image here, I hope you can still see it. I know it's sometimes not easy to see a shared screen, but you can see what we now consider to be the Western United States by the Census Bureau, okay? So this doesn't mean that everybody thinks this, but basically they count Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado. Okay, Hawaii is not, is obviously not part of the what we call the contiguous states, okay, so it's not on the mainland, but it still counts. Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon. It looks like Oregon, and many Americans call it Oregon, but if you live there, you would say Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. Okay. Now, as far as land mass, you can see how giant it is. And the population, 78 million people. And what do we call people from there? We call them Westerners. Okay. Here we have some images. Okay, maybe you recognize these cities here.
Sorry.
Give you a chance. Yes?
Yeah, there is the problem of Texas, no? Because Texas.
What's the problem with Texas?
Yes, Texas is not, we told the last time that Texas in truth is not a southern state, no?
Right.
But in truth is not a western state.
Right. And yet it's still
but
considered
anyway,
part of the West.
if you watch, if you are going to watch Western movies, 15% are set in Texas. With the cowboys, with the cows, with the sheriffs, and all together. No?
Yeah.
But Texas is Texas, another thing.
Yeah, Texas is its own thing. But you're right. Part of the, this mythology we have about the West really does include Texas culturally in a big way. When we talk about even American folk tales, a lot of folk tales about the West are all about Texas. I'll show you today. I found a website that has a lot of what we call tall tales, which are specifically American folk tales. And many of them have as their region, it's the West, but they're talking about Texas. So Texas often gets lumped in with Southern states because of the accent, but also with Western states. But sometimes Texas is just Texas. So you're right. It is that kind of, there are these different definitions about what it means to be part of the West, right? So if I look at these photos, I'm just going to scroll through them quick and then tell you what they are. But you see that when we think of the West, we do have these sort of populous places, but we also think about mountains and nature, the places that you really want to visit just to see the, things that are really marvelous and wonderful about America, right? The first one was just the Los Angeles skyline. When we think about Los Angeles, we think about films. We don't necessarily think about this amazing skyline that it has, right? Um, we also have the Grand Canyon. Okay. This is the Grand Canyon here, which is not, of course, the perfect picture of the Grand Canyon because you can't really get a good idea of the Grand Canyon. Yellowstone, the Boise, Idaho skyline, Angel's Landing, Mount Rainier, and the Seattle skyline. So that's what all these are. So different states, completely different um, nature, different types of skylines, just a mix of everything. But there's a reason that many of our most beautiful cities or places to live are in the West. Now, I want to show you this website here. And of course, I copied one for you. I'm going to just pop it in my browser so you can see. Can you see my screen? Does it say Tall Tales?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we see.
Sure. What do you see on my screen?
Tall tales.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So if you notice here, Tall Tales are just American folklore. These are stories. In fact, these are free stories. So it's in your lesson, but I'm gonna also put it into the chat here in case you want to take a look later. I'm gonna open up. I'm gonna actually stop sharing for just a moment so I can put this link into the chat. Okay, and I'm gonna share my screen again so you can see. All right, so you should see this, The Devil's Christmas Gift, Davy Crockett and the Frozen Nut. Davy Crockett is one of our folk heroes, of course. But if I just click on here, it says, oh, this is a Tennessee tall tale. So I wanted Western United States, and it gives me like the South. It gives me um, a lot of things. Brer Rabbit, where's this one from? This one doesn't say. This is just generic. But many of these are actually take place in Texas. And I thought, what's going on? I'm trying to get something from the West. Like I really want to do Babe the Blue Ox, but I think I'm going to save Babe for when we do the Midwest because it's a Minnesota tall tale. So we'll get to that oh no, not week, next week, because next week we're doing politics, the week after. But you'll see that a lot of these stories, okay, these are the stories that we tell our children, the stories that we kind of grew up with. Most of these stories are from that period of Western expansion, creating these myths about what it was like to live in, the old West, or, just people who are making their way out westward and, meeting animals that talk to them and guide them and everything else. So anyway, this is a very fun website that has a lot of these stories in it. So I put that in there. And in fact, I actually copied the text of a story about Davy Crockett. Now, if you've seen films with Davy Crockett, he's the one who has the hat, the fur hat with the raccoon tail hanging down. So maybe you've heard about Davy Crockett. But when we talk about the West, of course, we're talking about the cowboys and we talk about the campfire cooking. And there is this nostalgia for that, period. And so now you can even find recipes online for things like cowboy stew. So I put a recipe for you for cowboy stew. Where did I put that? I guess I didn't put I'm going to put the title here. This is called cowboy stew. A stew is like a kind of very thick soup. You can see from the photo here, he's got the coffee hanging there. So Americans always like big coffee. We never went for the mocha thing. We want the big, big, big giant coffee. We want to drink it all day. And the cowboys were definitely drinking coffee all the time. In fact, the secret ingredient in the best chili recipes. Again, chili is another kind of stew, another thick soup, tomato based with vegetables and beans and meat. One of the secret ingredients is coffee.
Oh,
Nobody tells you that, but that's what the cowboys didn't throw anything away, so they were even using their old coffee grounds. Anyway, the cowboy stew in this particular one has bacon and kielbasa, kind of sausage, and ground beef. and potatoes and beans, okay, and vegetables. So this is a hearty stew that's gonna keep you full. What to serve with the cowboy stew? It's hearty and flavorful and can be complemented with various side dishes to create a well-rounded meal. Here's some ideas. So cowboy stew, you might eat cornbread with it. And there's even a link here for um, a a recipe for cornbread. And cornbread is made with like corn. It's a rough cornmeal, so rougher than polenta. Polenta is very fine, but cornbread has a really rough kind of flour. But you can make cornbread in that same skillet. Um, in the it's not wrought iron. We don't call it wrought iron. I can't. It's driving me crazy that I can't remember what that's called. In fact, it's the one thing that I miss from living here is I don't have my griddle. This is cornbread. It looks like this. You don't have to make it in an oven. You can actually make it on a stove top. So that's why cowboys liked it because you could make it just on the open fire. Or you could use buttermilk biscuits. You've seen those before. Remember, biscuits in America are not biscotti, but they're biscuits. They're like bread. They're salty. Okay. Or
Yeah,
maybe dinner
biscuits
rolls.
are scones, are called scones in
Well,
yes.
yeah, scones in England are different than our buttermilk biscuits, for example. Scones are a little on the sweet side, so they're in the same family, Silvio. It's true. But if an American ate a scone from England, they would never say it was like a biscuit. They're a little bit different. We're very possessive about our biscuits. Our biscuits are very special. Dinner rolls are just, regular bread. Mashed potatoes or cauliflower. Now everybody uses cauliflower, right? Because it's because now nobody wants to have starch, but whatever. And then coleslaw, maybe you know about coleslaw. It's the, cabbage, the cold, get the cabbage salad, right? So delicious. Some people don't like it. I think it's delicious. So I think we need to plan our trip. So we've got a couple things to think about. I'm just going to show you a couple things and then we'll open it up for you to help us plan. So we need to decide how long our trip is going to be, where we want to go, and how we're going to travel. Also remembering that traveling, oh, it looks like oh gosh, no, no. Coleslaw is not insalata russo. No, no, no. No, no, no. Definitely not that. Okay. How are we going to travel? Remember that the United States is big and there's not a lot of public transportation. So we're going to probably have to rent a car or a camper or something. Okay. Now I found this lovely video that you can watch on your own. This is a 3-week Western United States trip that takes us from California, Nevada, Arizona, and Utah. So it leaves out those Pacific Northwest states that we're going to talk about later on. So I kind of purposely didn't go up in that direction because we want to have enough time in these places. So you can watch that when you want. And then let's just talk about when we want to travel in the West. So there are different seasons for traveling, as you know. The peak season is when there's the most tourists, right? So it's the summer from June to August. It's peak season. It doesn't mean it's the best time because it's very crowded, as you can imagine. It's good for warm weather, which is good for the beaches in California. But remember that California is always hot all year. And the water is always cold. So we just need to know that. Water is always cold in California, but the weather is always nice. Okay. Now, if you're in Florida, there's definitely a peak season that's in the winter. And in that case, the water in Florida is always warm. But in California, it's freezing. So the danger is, of course, it's hot, hot, hot. You go in the water to cool off. You come out and you just want to get warm again, and then you get sunburned. So you have to be very careful. But outdoor activities, if you're into, I don't know, rock climbing, or you're into, those outdoor activities, also think about when you want to travel because you don't want it to be too hot. But they're going to be larger crowds and higher prices, especially if you're going to go to the touristy places during the peak season in the summer. Okay, now there's also a rainy season, especially in the Pacific Northwest, but we're not going to talk about that today because we're going to go there in 3 weeks, I think. So Washington and Oregon are going to be our Pacific Northwest places. It's very rainy, very green, very beautiful. But the rainy season is from late fall, which is autumn for you, through the early spring. So from November to March. And there's cooler temperatures, it rains a lot, but there are less tourists. So we have to decide. And lush landscapes, meaning it's green, it's beautiful. So you have to decide what's important to you. Then we have the winter season from December to February, which is mild in California, which is nice. So if you want to be a little bit cooler, but not freezing, okay? On the other hand, in the Pacific Northwest, it's cold and wet, and so it's good for snow, okay? Snow and sports in the mountains. So, in the West, there's this very big difference in temperature, big difference in climate. So you have to kind of decide what you want to do. We also have the shoulder seasons that are in the spring from March to May, and in the fall from September to November, okay, which offer nice temperatures, blooming landscapes, which means there's a lot of flowers, it's beautiful, colorful foliage if it's in the fall. So excellent for exploring the diverse landscapes and cities of the West Coast. So you have to kind of decide if you want to do the shoulder season, the winter season, rainy season, or the peak season.
Yes.
It also depends, I suppose, if you work or not. We can pretend that we're independently wealthy if
I
we want, and
went
we don't even have to worry about that. Huh?
many years ago. I went to California in
Yes.
July, no?
In July.
In July.
Okay. How was
And
that?
in Southern California, it was warm, but the water was cold, of course. But in San Francisco, it was cold. Not so, and in fact, do you know quoting Mark Twain? No, Mark Twain told, "My coolest winter, a summer in San Francisco."
Yeah. So
It
San
was cold.
Francisco has a microclimate. It has
Yes,
its own
always.
climate. It's completely different than the
Yes,
rest of
always
California.
autumn. Always autumn.
It's always autumn. Yeah, so San Francisco has its pros and its cons, but it's completely different than the other parts of California. It's true. Or the parts where people go, Death Valley, those places, hot, hot, hot. But then you've got San Francisco. It's its own
Little
special
bit.
place, its own microclimate.
Yeah.
So we have to decide where we want to go. So I'm going to ask someone who's in the classroom in Bolzano there. Does someone have a microphone? Who's the speaker there? If you have the microphone or someone wants to speak, you can be the voice of the group for the moment. Oh, nobody wants to sit in the front.
Hello?
Hey,
Hello.
okay, who am I talking to?
Gianni.
Hi. Where are we going to go for our trip? Where would you, oh, first, let's decide what state would you like to go to?
I like to go to Arizona.
Okay, I'm going to put Arizona is going to be on our trip. Perfect.
Yes.
What do you want to do in Arizona? Are you interested in the Grand Canyon?
Yes.
Are you interested?
Yes. I'm interested
Okay.
in the nature, in Grand Canyon, Monument Valley, and Navajo Reservation.
Okay, Monument Valley and the Navajo Nation. Perfect. So we could start there. Do you have a season that you'd like us to go? Is there a good season for you? Do you prefer the summer is going to be very
I
hot, but
prefer
Arizona's hot.
nah, but I think that in Arizona is mild in winter too.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
it?
So it's a good
Uh,
time. Yeah, definitely.
And okay, for this reason, I can go in winter, for example. Yeah,
Oh, good
in
idea.
December,
December. Okay, I'm putting it on our list. We'll do it in December. What a great idea. How
after
are you
Christmas,
doing? You're okay?
after Christmas, but
After Christmas.
in
Okay.
Christmas stay
After
here in
Christmas.
Bolzano. Yeah.
I love it. Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to start our trip in Arizona. I'm going to put that in our chat. We're starting our trip in Arizona in the winter, right? After Christmas. And we want to go to the Grand Canyon. So we have to start training now. We want to go to Monument Valley, right?
Yes,
And you wanted to go to the Navajo Reservation, right?
right.
Okay. Navajo Nation, I think they call it. Wonderful. Okay, we're going to start there. We'll put that on our map. Thank you. Can you pass the microphone to someone else who wants to share as well?
Hello, I'm Michela.
Hi. Hi,
Hi.
Michaela. Where would you like to go, Michaela? Michaela,
To
sorry.
California.
Okay. Is it your dream to go to California?
I have been there a lot of years ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so you've been there before.
Yeah,
Do you have any
in
suggestions for us?
I loved San Francisco. I have been there for 3 weeks to have
3 weeks in San
yes,
Francisco.
because
Wow.
I attended an English course
Fantastic.
as I was young.
It's great to be young and be a
Yes.
student, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, did you have a good experience in San Francisco?
Yes, it's very interesting city. I loved it. And in the weekends, I went to Yosemite and to Sequoia National Park,
Oh, wow.
and then
Okay, great.
down to LA
And then
through
down to
Santa
LA.
Barbara and Malibu. And I stayed a few
Hmm.
days, not a long time. Because
Not
I
a
have
long
to
time.
yes, because I have to return to attend the lessons. Otherwise,
Otherwise,
yes,
that was it. And
yeah.
okay, what do you think about what season should we go? Now we have we did Arizona in the winter. Do you want to continue the winter thing or do you want a different season?
No, I went there in May,
Hmm.
and I think could be during the spring a good time,
Okay.
perhaps.
Okay. See, we can go in the spring. Okay. Are there any places that you did not visit that you feel like this time you really want to visit?
Perhaps. Oh, I don't remember. I know, but I don't remember the name. It's
Okay,
in
it'll
the
come to
south.
you.
It's very famous, but in this moment I don't remember. San Diego. Yeah, sorry.
San Diego. Yeah, everybody loves San Diego, right? Hmm. Okay, we can visit San Diego this time. Yeah,
I've
it's
been.
supposed to be like the perfect city. Everybody loves San Diego. I've never
Yes.
been there. I've been to California a million times because my
Okay.
dad lived there, but I've never been to San Diego, but it's everybody's favorite. So I feel like me too. When we go there, let's go to San Diego.
San Diego maybe is the
Okay.
best American city.
Have
Yeah.
you been there,
Yes, yes,
Lanfranco?
yes.
It's a
What's so
high.
good about it?
That is nice. It's very nice. The weather is nice because it's warm but dry. There
It's
is
warm but dry.
dry because
Okay.
in the back there is the desert, no? And the nice beaches, no? Nice beaches
Okay.
and nice beaches and the wonderful lagoons in the city. There are the lagoons, no?
Sure.
With nice bridges who cross the lagoon to it is a particular city. It's a particular city.
Okay.
And
You've
a lot of
convinced me.
tourism is it was really quiet. No, there
Mhm.
were a lot of Mexicans, but very friendly. And I remember a nice partnership with Americans and the Mexicans in Mexican immigrants in
It's
San
part of
Diego.
our even American culture too, right?
Yes,
Mexican. What would American
it
food
is. It
without
is not.
Mexican food it wouldn't exist, right? Thank
It
you.
is. It is
Michaela, is there
not.
anything you want to add?
It is not a violent city. There was. I don't remember crime on particular situation. It was clean, clean. Everything was nice.
Okay. Thank you, Lanfranco. Michaela, anything you want to add to our
I
California trip?
in this moment I no.
You feel like we
Enough.
got it?
Yes.
Excellent.
No.
Okay, so we've got Arizona. So it looks like our trip so far is going to be like in different legs, different phases, because we've got, unless we can fill it up with some other places, you've got Arizona and California. Arizona in the winter, California in the spring. So we need something to fill up those in between months. Okay. Michaela, can you pass the microphone to someone else in the room who maybe wants to share their idea of where they want to go?
You want? No. You too? No. 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 So it's all, I think it's all.
Okay, it's a room of shy
Everyone
people.
is shy.
Everyone is shy, and I'm scary. I know. Maybe when I'm there, it'll be different. They'll find their courage. Okay, what about Bruno? Where else can we go, Bruno? We need to fill up those. We've got some months we need to fill up. Any place you're interested in going to?
Well, mm, no, I don't know. No, no, no.
Because
No
the United States
idea.
isn't really like your dream, is it?
Yes, but I I would like to go to New York.
Okay, so New York.
Yeah.
New York is New York. Okay,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. Okay, so well, New York we already went to, so we've already done that. So I would say, maybe I can try to convince you guys there's some other places that you should visit. For
Yeah,
example,
Los
well, let's
Angeles
talk
is
about,
my favorite
huh?
city. Los Angeles would be my favorite city to visit. I would probably add on the trip Beverly Hills, Hollywood. They're pretty close. And the Golden Bridge in San Francisco.
Okay, so those are because Silvio, I understand you like cities more. You're interested in the cities, right? More than the
All right,
nature.
the skyscrapers for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And so Los Angeles, of course, has a good skyline. Beverly Hills is a very sort of fancy kind of place. It's, we see it on television all the time. Of course, we have to go there. If we like nature, all we have to do is just go two steps outside the city, and there's a million things to see there. So I think it's a good mix. All of those national parks too are, there's so many of them just in California. I don't know how many national parks it has, but tons of them.
In, in
So I
southern
think
in
there's something
Southern
for everyone.
California. In Southern
What?
California would be also interesting in Southern California to pass by car between the American and Mexican border and across the desert to see the
Yeah,
cacti and the bumblebee, the tumbleweed. Yeah, the tumbleweed.
tumbleweeds. Yeah. And Mexico is really fun too. I mean, why not take a little, we could go for the weekend to Mexico. So fun, so great. Excellent food, great music, great people. I'm definitely all for that. I like it. I'm gonna give you some other places, or let's see what comes to mind if we think about this. What comes to your mind when you think of Nevada, for example? What's the city in Nevada that comes to your mind?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, right?
Vegas.
Um, so Las Vegas has, what we know about it is, of course, all the gambling and these sort of big hotels and also, like even shows we could go see, but not everybody's into that. But Las Vegas is also a great place for hiking. So some of you may want to go and try your luck, see if you can
Ah,
become rich. And the other part of the group may want to just go hiking. I've got people who moved to Las Vegas just so they could be in nature. So we don't normally think about that, but very beautiful areas, Also, Nevada is very interesting for people who want to save money on taxes. It's a
Ah,
tax
Area
haven.
51. Area 51 is in
Area
Nevada
51, very interesting. If you're interested in aliens, aliens
for
that
sure.
land out there. They also land in
The
Wisconsin.
the
We'll
Death
talk
Valley,
about in a couple of weeks. Huh?
the Death
Death
Valley is
Valley.
in Nevada too, or is it?
Death
True.
Valley.
Death Valley. If some of you are um, extreme athletes, there are even these ultra marathons where you can do 100-mile run, okay, which is 160 kilometers through Death Valley. You can do that. We can make your dream come true if you're interested in running 160 kilometers in the middle of the desert. People do this all the time. It's crazy.
Uh, the,
But
De- the Death Valley became famous in Italy because of the Antonioni movie, Zabriskie Point.
ah, is that
30 years
right?
ago, it became famous because we didn't know about it. When we watched this film, a wonderful film with nice music and very well shot,
Oh,
no?
wow.
And the most important point was Monument Valley, not Monument
Monument
Valley,
Valley.
Zabriskie
Death
Point.
Valley, right?
Zabriskie Point. It is the viewpoint in the Death Valley. Zabriskie Point, I think. No.
And it's interesting because now it's a very popular destination for Italians.
Yeah, after this film became,
You think it's the film?
because of this film, had a great, but 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but
I'm
it
sure.
was very, very famous and very, very well shot.
Interesting.
I
Well, it's
had,
also true that even places like the Grand Canyon, which how many someone has been to the Grand Canyon before?
No.
Anybody been to
No.
the Grand Canyon? So the Grand Canyon is, I remember I hiked the Grand Canyon when I was 16, just with my school. It was like a school trip. And I remember being so amazed because we did the hike. It takes quite a few hours. It's long, it's hot, it's wonderful. But I didn't see any Americans the whole day. I only saw Europeans. And I remember thinking, oh, isn't that so interesting? It's like this all over the world, right? We go far away to go to these beautiful places, but we forget what we have in our own backyard. So I didn't, in that whole day, I did not see one American. No, I did see one American that day, American and his father, and they were from Santa Cruz, California, which is also another interesting place. And but everybody else was, Germans, Italians, just all these other people who knew way more than the Americans did about where to go. So I always felt like, oh gosh, the Europeans are so much smarter than we are. We're so stupid.
in my
My
opinion,
my
for my experience, personal experience, the Grand Canyon is the best, the biggest, and not a nature show in the world.
Sure. It's definitely special.
For my
Someone in the room,
experience.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Was it that was your name Daniele? Danny?
no, okay, no, my name is Gianni. No,
Johnny. So, oh, I know you, Johnny. I thought
no,
I recognized you. Nice to see
my
you,
ge-
Johnny.
my generation loves Grand Canyon because we we grew up with films, Western films or Tex Wheeler, some ideas of the old Wild West.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to visit the Grand Canyon?
Can you repeat, please?
Did you visit the Grand Canyon?
No, never
But
been.
you would like to, would you like to in the future?
Yes, I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there are these yeah, I think it's part of that sort of the adventure, right? Of going out west, going to the Grand Canyon. I think there's also a lot about the Native American culture there too, right? Just people who are sort of expert in those areas, et cetera. So, yeah, it's interesting how films and literature can influence even the places that we want to see because you really enter into these stories, you feel like you experience them as well. So, yeah, I'm also very influenced by what I read and what I see. It makes me want to visit places. And I think the Grand Canyon is a place that, on one hand, you can definitely see that there's something special there. But when you get there, you just can't imagine how vast it is. And the Grand Canyon is one of many canyons. It's the big one, of course, is the Grand Canyon, but there's also Bryce Canyon. There's a lot of small, it's that area is
Yes,
called
I
Canyon
yeah,
Land.
yeah, I know. For example, I know the Bryce Canyon,
Mhm.
Antelope Canyon,
Uh-huh.
and okay, the Monument Valley and the North Rim, South Rim.
Oh, well done. You know your stuff. Good. I
Yes,
like
but
it.
just just theoretisch, come si dice? Yes, in the theory, but
In
not
theory, right?
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's sometimes these are places that have these fascination for us. And I think everyone has a special place, could be in America. Many people have this sort of, could be America for me, it might be South America or it might be Europe, these special places that even if you don't get to go there right away, you just are fascinated by them, right? And I think a lot of those places are just, we're drawn to them because of their beauty and, this sort of, there's also something about like the Grand Canyon is one place like this where you really feel, or I think the Monument Valley, Death Valley, all these places, if you actually hike them, when you're finished doing that, you just feel like you've done something really important. And I think that the big satisfactions in life are when we do something that we don't even know if it's possible. I remember going down into the Grand Canyon thinking, gosh, maybe I can't do it. Maybe I'm not, maybe I'm not in shape enough. Maybe I'll have to be taken out in a helicopter. You sometimes you have these doubts. It's like running a marathon or something. You think maybe I won't finish. And I think those are the memories that stay with you too, because there is a sense of adventure to it. In the Canyonland, you can even, you can fly over them because they have these small airplanes that you can go and you could just see these immense places. It's just incredible. You said something about Sequoia National Park as well, like these giant trees that are so old you just can't even imagine. They've just been around since history, right? So are these all these incredible places to visit? Where I'm from, the Midwest, I mean, we don't have that kind of, historical nature. So when you go to those places where it's just so vast, you really do come to terms with how small we are. It's like going to the ocean, for the first time. The first time I saw the ocean was in California. And I remember going, wow, we are so small. Like the ocean is so big. It's just this open place, I just find it so fascinating. It's interesting too how the cities that are growing the fastest right now happen to be in the West. We talked about Texas, Austin, Texas. I know we can decide, is it Texas, is it the West? But Texas definitely has areas that are growing very, very fast, like Austin, that's like the place to be. But there are also places, Montana is it's become a very, very important place for people to move to. There's places like Butte, the places that we've seen in films as well that are just growing like crazy because people have this idea of the West as being a place that's closer to nature, that's, you can get away, you can have a better quality of life. Of course, the more people go, the more we bring the big city with us. But it's still true that people seem to be, those are the places that are growing. Also, Denver, Colorado, the mountains. Denver is about probably an hour away from where you would actually go skiing. It's at ground level, it's at sea level, but you go up into the mountains about hour and a half. And those are places that are just growing like crazy, right? Because people have these, it used to be New York, maybe, or Chicago, but now people are moving out west again. So it's an interesting thing that the Western United States is becoming the place. Oregon, Portland, Oregon, another one that during the 90s became very popular. I think also because of music, because of popular music at the time. If you think about Seattle, Washington, you think about grunge music in the 90s. That's all the young people. When I was graduating from university, everybody was going out to Seattle because that was the place to go. So even where young people decide to move changes depending on what's happening also in film, in music, in culture. So it's an interesting thing. We're not necessarily changing city for work anymore. We used to change for work. Now people can work from home a lot of times. And so they're choosing where to live based on, sometimes it's affordability, but sometimes it's also what you want to be doing in your free time. So it's interesting what kinds of decisions go into what parts of the country are growing faster than others, for example. So we talked about, we've got California, we talked about Colorado just briefly. It's interesting how Hawaii and Alaska are also included in the West, even if they're not considered part of they're definitely not the contiguous, meaning touching parts of the United States. But for the Census Bureau, they kind of lump us all together. We didn't talk about Idaho. Idaho is also a popular place to move right now. Idaho, we said
Idaho.
Montana.
In Idaho,
Because people want to be outside. They're skiing, outdoor sports.
I have the idea that in Idaho there is nothing.
Yeah, and it's not true. Yeah, Idaho is actually a popular place now. It's famous for potatoes. So when when American thinks of Idaho, we think of these giant, delicious potatoes. Idaho potatoes are the best kind ever.
Big agriculture.
But it's also popular for other reasons as well. Nevada, we talked about. There's the Las Vegas, but then there's the rest of Nevada that's full of nature as well. New Mexico, we didn't talk about. Is anybody interested in going to New Mexico?
Too far.
Not really.
Now, New
I,
Mexico, I love New Mexico. New Mexico has its own culture, and it's very, if you're interested in Native Americans or Native American culture, you will love New Mexico because New Mexico has this very interesting, well, Texas also does, but New Mexico has a very interesting culture that mixes Native American culture, Western culture. It's very interesting. Lots of great things happening, lots of great art that way. So a lot of there are
Yeah.
artist colonies in New Mexico, because it's seen as an inclusive place, a place that's you can be creative. It's got good weather. It's a great place to go if you're retired. My father actually, moved from California to New Mexico in his later years because he said he just liked it. There were places you could go where you didn't need a car. You could be with other people who are interested in creative pursuits, and it was good for being an outdoorsy person. He liked to go, he's not with us anymore, but he used to like to ride his bike and be around other people who were also retired, and so a lot of retired people, because of the weather, also go to New Mexico. We talked about
I'm
Oregon.
sorry,
Washington we'll talk about
Caroline.
next time. Bruna, you have to
Sorry,
go.
sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I have to go. Thank you very much. See
Thank you. I'll
you
talk to you
next
soon.
week. Bye bye.
Yes,
Thank
we'll
you.
definitely
catch
see you
you
next week.
later.
Bye.
I
um
actually have a friend of mine from New Mexico, and he has always to drive 4 hours to buy gas or to do the food shopping. So
Really,
yeah, it's
distances
an
are greater. Yeah. People are used to being in their cars for longer. In fact, you'll notice that when you go to America, gas is cheaper than here, okay? Which otherwise we wouldn't survive. If we had European prices, it would be devastating, right? Because we don't have the infrastructure. The Western United States were basically developed after the car. The big cities became after the car. So you'll see even just the way they're set up, there are places with no sidewalks. You like cannot walk, it's not like the Eastern United States where it was, developed before the car. So it's more of a European, the central place, maybe a main street, and then everybody in that. The Western United States are much more dispersed, and there's a lot of space between places. In fact, people make jokes about it all the time, like in California, how much in the car you are. Even if you live in Los Angeles, everything is so spread out that a normal conversation with someone often includes what was your secret for getting to your meeting on time? Like what highways did you take? How did you avoid this? And I was on the 70 to the 209 to the this is like a normal part of conversation. Like in England, they talk about the rain. In California, you talk about the traffic. And you talk about what's the easiest way to get from point A to point B. So it's just part of the culture there. Wyoming, we didn't talk about. And we didn't talk about, I used to live in South Dakota when I was younger. Now, South Dakota, you might know of, or you might have heard of Mount Rushmore, that big monument with the president's heads on them. That's South Dakota. And it's kind of, again, it's kind of a murky area. It could be considered Midwest, it could be the West, but I've always considered it out West because it was so far from where I grew up in Wisconsin, which is definitely the Midwest. So when I think about the West, I just think of space. I think of this sort of idea of freedom, that we have this sort of mythological thing. In actuality, most of these places are just big cities like everywhere else, but there is something to our imagination that still likes to imagine the West as being a place of discovery and freedom. And it goes back to what we've been talking about over the last few weeks, which is our American road trip theme, which is, the American road trip is such a part of our identity because it's all about us trying to get to know ourselves through what our surroundings. And so I think that the part of the West that's so interesting is just the idea of like overcoming obstacles, as you go through this difficult terrain or these places that are so challenging, you're also getting to know yourself better. So I think there's something kind of special when we talk about these different areas of America and the places that we want to discover. We all have places that we want to visit. and for different reasons. Some people, their dream is to go to Montana to go fly fishing. That's a big, right? Some people, I want to just go be with the fish. Some people want to go learn how to surf. Some people want to go skiing. There's a lot of fossils and dinosaurs and all kinds of things you can see in the West. If you go to La Brea, California, these preserved places where you can really see lots of fossils and find out what the world looked like thousands and thousands of years ago. So there are all these, there's something for everybody. And I think it's kind of fun to take a look at some of these places together. And I love hearing about what your itineraries would be, because it's interesting to see what you, coming from your background, what you would find interesting to visit. So thank you to those of you who shared your idea of what you would like to visit or what you've already visited. And I hope that if you didn't share, I hope that it made you think a little bit about where you would like to go. Or maybe it makes you think about what are the beautiful things that you have in your backyard, that maybe it's time to visit again, right? Sometimes it's a good to take a staycation. Like this year, I'm taking a staycation all year because last year I traveled a lot and I was lucky, but this year I need to like slow down a little bit. So I'm going to do a staycation and try to discover more areas around where I live as well. I want to remind you that next week we'll be together. Next Tuesday is the election. Everybody is on pins and needles trying to understand who's going to win. Nobody knows. Is it going to be Donald Trump or is it going to be Kamala Harris? Nobody knows. So next week we have a lot to talk about because hopefully we'll have a winner by then. So Tuesday is the actual election day. People have been voting for a couple of months now. I voted early. You can send in your ballot. And then on Tuesday, they will start counting them. And we're going to keep our eye on those swing states that you've been hearing about, the ones that have that could go either way, that could also decide the destiny of this election. So remember, we don't use a popular vote. We have an electoral college. So it depends on these different states. So next week, when we talk together, we're going to talk about what that system looks like. We're going to also have our comments and be able to talk about it together, what we think is going to happen in the next 4 years, what that means for us here in Europe, what it means in America. So I hope that you will come, bring someone if you want. I'm very excited to be with you. And it will be an hour and a half because if you have been with us, you noticed that a couple of weeks ago when I was in Palermo instead of Trieste, I had technical issues. And so we're going to put that 30 minutes on next week's lesson so that we have more time together to talk. Okay? So,
Sorry.
yes, you have a question.
Do you have
Great.
an idea about the elections? No.
I have a lot of ideas about the election, but I'm going to keep my
But,
mouth shut until next week.
And
But I'll tell
neither
you,
what do you hope?
I don't know. I have no idea who's going to win. It's so close that we just don't know. Everybody's nervous.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Expats like you, where do you vote, for example, in the embassy? And another question, come si chiamano i grandi elettori, the big electors, come si chiamano?
We call them the electoral college.
Okay, which college do you belong, for example, as
Good
an
question.
expat?
Sure. So as an expat, I do vote. I vote. It's changed over the years, and I'll explain that better next week. But this year, every time there's a presidential election, I have to register again. And then I receive a ballot, which is what you vote with, from my state of Wisconsin. So I'm counted. I'm a swing state voter. So my vote counts for Wisconsin. And they sent me actually a PDF this time. So now they're finally doing it digital, except I had to download, I had to vote, and then I had to put it in an envelope and find a witness, a testimony, a witness to say that I'm really Caroline Steckley. And then I had to send those 2 envelopes to my city. So I had to send them to Wisconsin by
Okay.
regular mail, so not digitally. Hopefully it arrived there okay, but I did
Thank
it
you.
early enough. I did it at the beginning of September.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I see you next week. I hope you have a great week and I hope you enjoyed the lesson. If you want a copy of the lesson, just ask Simone who's there and I will make sure that you get it. Okay? Take care.
See you later.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye, 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 bye.